1. About 8 years ago, I lived in a small town that was about a 45-minute ferry ride to Seattle. There was not a whole lot to do for a 14-year-old, other than visit the local Walmart or go bowling. My days usually consisted of smoking a bowl or two after school with my friend Derek at my house. My house had a not-so-typical driveway. It was a long, uphill gravel driveway with a pallet covering a ditch at the bottom of it. Across the street, there was an older man who no one really knew much about. His driveway was basically the opposite of mine, downhill, paved, and a large overhang of trees. Being teenagers, we'd see how far we could go down his driveway before we got caught, or before it got too weird. He had multiple no trespassing and warning signs posted on the trees leading down to his house. But we had never made it that far. On this particular day, we needed to do something different. Instead of just sitting in my room after we smoked, we went to the bottom of my driveway and stood on the pallet. We watched as the cars whizzed past us, enjoying the weather when Derek started humming a particular alternative song that we both knew. I enjoyed this song as well, so I joined him, and continued to watch the cars until we noticed a gold Toyota Camry pulling out of the driveway across the street. The man in the car pulled out, took a right, and stared at us as he drove down the street. Now let me assure you, this house had one way in and one way out, since it was on the water. Now this is where it gets weird. After the man pulled out, Derek and I continued to hum but also chuckled, thinking how he was only staring at us because we looked ridiculous, just standing at the bottom of my driveway grinning. What seemed like 10 or 15 seconds had passed, and we spotted the front bumper of a gold Toyota Camry poking out from the same driveway across the street. The same older man behind the wheel, taking a right turn, all while staring at us before driving down the street. I realized there was no possible way this could have happened, so I peered to my left to see if Derek had seen the same thing, or if I was just losing my mind. Derek was not there. At this point, he was already halfway up my driveway, shaking his head, mumbling, "No fucking way." We went back up to my room in absolute disbelief. About 5 minutes after the incident happened, I could not, for the life of me, remember what song we were humming. Out of curiosity, I asked Derek if he could recall the name, since I could not. He sat with a dazed look on his face and shook his head back and forth. Derek and I, to this day, do not remember the name of the song, but remember everything else that happened. It is definitely one of the most bizarre things that has ever happened to me. 2. For the longest time I can remember, at various moments of the day, I suddenly get this intense emotion as if I just lived something that didn't actually happen. But it's so intense and feels real for a few seconds, and it takes over me and I become obsessed with it. Almost to the point where if I close my eyes, I can actually remember it happening with details. One example of many. I was driving my car the other day and, just out of nowhere, I had this vision where the car in front of me stopped suddenly and I had a major accident. I could actually feel the sudden stop. I could feel the car flipping over and me hitting my head on the front shield. It's such an extremely intense feeling that it made me lose reality for about 3 or 4 seconds, and when I came back, I had to focus on where I was at the time. Same thing happened now before I wrote this. My 3-year-old child is sleeping in his room, and my wife is asleep in our bed. I'm sitting downstairs in the living room. Out of nowhere, I just had this tremendous emotion where I envisioned her screaming my name and asking me to come up to our child's bedroom, me throwing the laptop on the floor and running up the stairs. And then I was back here. I sometimes get sweaty from these moments. Recently, they are becoming more and more frequent. And I want to know if I'm the only one who goes through this. Should I understand it more, or should I just ignore it? I am a firm believer in the Mandela effect and the existence of other timelines, quantum physics as explained by Einstein, and I'm getting myself more and more knowledgeable into these theories because they fascinate me. So I do have a theory about why this is happening to me, but I would love to hear you crazy people and what you think of it. Thank you. 3. So my job consists heavily of emailing and scheduling meetings with my clients. This glitch involves two clients who we will refer to as Client A and Client B. At around 11:40 a.m. yesterday, I sent an email to Client A asking what time this week would be a good time to have a meeting. I instantly received an auto-response saying that Client A was out of town and unavailable. A few moments later, I received an email from what I believe to be Client A saying, 1:30 p.m. on Thursday works fine for me. I didn't actually read the email or even look at who the sender was. I just briefly glanced at the preview of the email and left it for later on. I did, however, assume it was from Client A, because I had just asked them for their schedule. Later on, after I came back from my lunch break, I looked for the email so I could type up a response, but I couldn't find it. I searched all of my Outlook folders and the deleted box. I didn't think much of it, and decided that I'd look for it later, since I had a few things that needed my immediate attention. Later on that day, I had a meeting with Client B. After the meeting, I emailed Client B, asking when would be a good time for us to set up our next meeting. I didn't get a response back until 8:30 a.m. The response said 1:30 p.m. on Thursday works fine for me. I was shocked, as this was the exact same email that I received the day prior, but couldn't find when I went looking for it. I immediately checked all of my folders, spam and deleted box, to see if I could find the email from yesterday to check if maybe this was just a coincidence, and that my clients happened to both suggest the same time for meetings. But it was nowhere to be found. It seems to me that I received an email a day before it was even sent. This is extremely creepy to me. Has anyone ever experienced this before? 4. This already sounds weird, but a little over a year ago, my favorite dog passed away really unexpectedly. She was a Chihuahua and weenie dog type mix of dog. Other things thrown in, but that was the main thing we identified her as. We had went through a 500-mile move, and staying with family members who also had dogs made it hard to accommodate. She had no problems before, but this time it was bad, and it only took once for her to go. I left for school, and when I came home, my mom told me she had passed away in her little yard area from a seizure. I hadn't even gotten to really say goodbye to her. It hurt really bad, and even now I still miss her sometimes. But a few months ago, I went to this random swap meet with my family, and someone there happened to have puppies for sale. We almost didn't even see them, and as we were walking out, I glanced down and saw them in a basket. The people didn't even know what kind they were, and didn't know the dad, just the mom, and she was a Chihuahua. We had been looking for a new dog since we moved, and could have one again. I picked one up, a little boy. I instantly fell in love, and my mom did too. A week later, we arranged to buy him for $200 despite not knowing his breed. Well, it's like 4 months later, and he is the same as my dog who passed away, literally the same except a male. He has the same color and the same breed even. The swirls of his fur grow the same. He does the same things she did when she was little. And we still had some of her old toys and decided to give them to him, and he loves them just as much as she did. His eyes have the same look, his ears are the same. Sometimes the way he buries himself into my blankets to sleep is the same. The texture of his fur. He is her. I'm not one for any kind of reincarnation or anything weird, really. But this is too much of a coincidence to have been random, I think. I mean, a literally random swap meet, a random stall, randomly picking up one puppy, without even knowing what he would grow to be. And it being the exact same as my favorite dog who had passed away. And I thought about it, and it had been exactly a year since she had passed. The same month. 5. Very strange things have happened to me over the last couple of years involving rings, i.e. the circular jewelry for your fingers. I'm not sure why these occurrences always seem to be directly related to rings, or if there is any importance to them, but I'll tell you a few short stories which I distinctly remember and often talk about with my friends and family. First one was when I was 16. My father brought me back a ring from Turkey. It was given to him as a gift from a man he did business with when he was over there visiting. I wore it on my middle finger as it was quite large and thick. It is a silver ring with a pattern on it, consisting of small little circles, which look like the battlements of a castle. Anyway, one night I was sitting with a friend of mine out very late during the summer. We had walked to the 24-hour shop to buy cigarettes and a drink. I was an old-looking teenager. We were sitting on the steps of a vacant house and chatting. I was fidgeting with the ring, rolling it in my hands when I dropped it. We were on a slight hill, and it landed and immediately started rolling down the hill, and fast. It was loud too. It ringed as it rolled. I jumped up and started following it in the well-lit street. I could see it until a certain point, when suddenly the ring loudly stopped. Like when you cut the audio off abruptly in an editing program. No echo, no fade, just stopped. My friend Matty, who I was with, noticed this as well as me. The ring was gone. Matty came over to help me look. It was gone. No drains, no thick leaves, no crevices, just a tarmac road. I didn't think too much of it anyway. I wasn't going to jump to any supernatural conclusions. We both gave up on it and went home. I know what's coming is painfully obvious, but keep in mind this is true for me. I could be mistaken. Me and Matty both could have shared a false memory. I'm not counting it out, but 12 years later, last year, my mother was desperately looking for a file she needed. My father is retired due to serious illness for the last 10 years. This is a file she had been looking for the last 10 years. As my father's business was not limited, means we inherit the burden. Great, huh? So my mother was essentially threatened with legal action unless she turned over the file. She said enough was enough, and we should look through the stacks of documents one last time, before lawyering up and getting ready for battle. The first box she opened, the file she needed was there, and on top of it, my goddamn ring. She handed it back to me. I was so perplexed. I remember talking about this ring with other people. The story was so clear in my mind. Anyway, I WhatsApped Matty and asked him did he remember. He said he does, and without leading him I asked him to explain what happened. He recounted the above the same way I did. We both ended up agreeing it was a false memory, but I don't know. I have my ring back and I wear it every day. Only fits my ring finger now though, as I've grown. The next two I'll keep short, as they are basically the same. My ex-girlfriend when I was a teen used to go on holidays with her family a lot. My mother gave me a ring she received for her 21st birthday when I was younger. It fit my baby finger anyway. I used to give this ring to my ex when she went away, weird tradition, can't remember why exactly. I kept it on a chain for the most part. It was a ridged band, again pure silver. Anyway, one trip she lost it in the water, slid right off her hand when she was swimming in the ocean. She was really upset. I met her when she came back. She gave me the plain silver chain back. Whatever. Accidents happen. Speed forward to when I was 21, and we are broken up a few years. She messaged me and asked did I want to go for a drink on my birthday. I said why not. She told me on the phone that it's about time she gave me that ring back. I was so confused and thought she was referring to some gift I gave her, and wondered why she was bothering to give it back to me. She arrived and handed me my mother's ridged silver ring. I asked her about losing it in the ocean and she got confused. So did I. Like she remembered that and had conflicting memories as well. I took it and put it on a new chain and wore it on my neck for years, until I lost it again. This story could be accounted for very easily, I suppose. It's just not my testimony, and she made a mistake, simple. I just find it odd that it keeps happening around rings. So the third story, of 4, I was staying with another ex in my mid-20s. Her parents were out of town, and we were staying in their house. On the first night of her staying there, she told me about a claddagh ring she lost when she was a toddler. Claddagh rings are rings with a heart and hands on them. You wear with the heart facing in if you are in love, and with the heart facing out if you are not. It's an old Irish thing, where I'm from. Long story short, it shows up 2 days later on the kitchen counter. Tiny little ring. We were the only people in the house. The countertop was large and clean with no clutter, and this ring was just sitting there in the middle. It sent shivers down my spine. I asked if this was a prank. Not like her at all. She insisted it wasn't. She was about to throw the thing into a river. She was freaked out, crying. I insisted she didn't. She put it in a drawer and forgot about it. But we stayed at my place that night. Shudder. Never liked that place. She lived in a very old part of town with a sordid history. I have some very strange stories about that house and surrounding area, but I don't think it's for this board. Surely that's enough. Okay, last one. My father gave my mother an eternity ring after she had her third child, who later died in infancy. After he died, my mother had the cheap metal ring, a band lined with blue stones, remade with white gold and blue gemstones. 2 days later, she was walking through town, and she felt a pulling on her finger. She said she lifted her hand and the expensive white gold band was gone. She went home immediately and put the cheap metal eternity ring back on, and has worn it every day since. Last night, my mother rang me crying. She was drunk. She's Irish, some stereotypes are true, what can I say? She was rambling about how she felt the pull on her finger again, and she never wanted to feel that again. I asked her what the hell she was talking about, and she said her wedding band had been ripped from her finger, and it was a bad omen. Fair enough, I thought. It was late, but I called over anyway. She had upended the kitchen searching, and explained she had left it by the fridge. I got out a torchlight, and after an hour of searching I found the damn wedding band on the floor in an obvious place. I shrugged it off and handed it back to her. Now this is the part that gives me shivers as I write this. She went to pull her eternity ring off, and she couldn't, it was wedged on. I said, just slide it over the eternity ring. She barked back at me, no, you wear your wedding band on this finger first, and anything else on top. I asked her, is that how she always wore it? She said most definitely. She would never wear it any other way. Now I know she was drunk, but she was lucid, and she is not a stupid woman by any means. And she does not get her facts crossed. With great effort, she pulled the eternity ring off and slid her wedding band back on, and the eternity ring back over it. I asked how in the name of God did the wedding band jump that ring and fly off her finger. She insisted it pulled once again, and she said the feeling was horrific, like trying to push two opposing magnets together. How the ring hopscotched over the other I have no idea, but yet again, there is a lot of room for reasonable explanation, so who knows? I just know that each of the stories make me feel very uncomfortable, and that the events of last night have prompted me to write this story here. I'm a big fan of this thread, and I love the skepticism. That's why I want to post here instead of on No Sleep. Sorry for the long post, and thank you for those who have stuck with it. I have a niggling feeling that I maybe have forgotten some details. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on these, and would like to hear similar stories. What I have noticed is that all these stories seem to be revolving around my family, in one way or another, particularly my parents. I realize that these stories seem either bland or contrived and similar to so much you have already read, but these events have occurred to me, and were all witnessed by at least one other person. I have no reason to come here in post-fiction. The prospect of fooling someone into believing a made-up story does not entice me. I'd love some feedback by people who are interested, and who have had similar happen to them. Thanks again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 true Glitch in the Matrix stories 34. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I was very fortunate. I actually left it a little late this week. It kept slipping my mind to send messages, but the good folks who allowed me to use their stories were actually super open to me using them and very responsive. I actually got enough for 2 videos, I think, so that should hopefully see us to next week as well. Okay, I'm going to have to make this outro a little bit short. I've got the usual neighbours making noise at times they shouldn't be. I have dogs, screaming children, people making home improvements. It's always an adventure around here, so I'm just going to cut it short while I have enough silence to actually record. Okay, so with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.